All right. So, hi, everybody, and welcome back to Stimming in Stilettos with Dr. Tasha. When I tell you that I have an icon on the show today, I have a real live breathing icon. Dr. Trina Coleman is here with us, and I can't even wait to hear this story. I really am, I'm super excited. So, hey, Dr. Trina, how are you?
Hey, Dr. Tasha, how are you? I have not been called an icon before. I feel so honored. I'm accustomed to being around icons, but yes, thank you so much. I'm working on that, girl, getting up to the icon. I'm an icon in training. How about
Oh,
that?
is that what we're going with? Okay, we'll go with it.
Yes,
We have to
anybody?
work your way up to it. I got
Yeah,
you.
girl, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. But thank you for having me on. Thank you.
There is nobody that I admire more. Nobody who's worked as hard as I know you've worked. I'm so grateful that you took this 30 minutes with me today. I just can't even tell you how pleased I am that you are on the show.
Thank you. And I will tell your guests, I am not wearing stilettos during the pandemic. I own stilettos. I am just not wearing them today for this interview.
I
Uh,
promise you, I get it. I have on socks at the moment.
that doesn't mean we still don't have stem stiletto in our blood. Yes, ma'am. Yes,
I
ma'am.
I promise you, we do. We are Black women in STEM, and we show up as our full selves every day.
Yes, ma'am. And it's important that we do that because if not us, then who?
Exactly. So, as we begin every show and with every guest,
Mhm.
please tell us your STEM story.
Okay. Well, let's see. Where you want me to start? Back when I was 5, taking stuff apart. I mean, I knew then, when I was younger. Of course, we weren't using the word STEM then, but I was always interested in gadgets and I would ask for the craziest stuff for Christmas. Like, I asked for, back in the day, they had those little fake slot machines with fake little slugs. I wanted one of them. I didn't realize why, but it was about probability. Every time you pull that handle, you don't know what's going to pop up. So I asked for a slot machine, not because I wanted to go to Vegas. I didn't even know what Vegas was, but my STEM story goes back that far because I've always been interested in how stuff works and stuff like that. So moving forward, well, in parallel, I was always a good student. I was good at math and things like that, and I enjoyed school. So as that progressed, it still wasn't obvious to me that science was my thing. Thought I was going to be a computer scientist at one time, a computer programmer, as it was called back then, because I thought that was interesting. But, in fourth grade, I wanted to be an archaeologist. Then I wanted to be a meteorologist. But, I was staying in that track of STEM, which I, didn't realize until, it was like, bam, oh, I like science. Woo. So, progressed through high school. I ended up in physics because I had taken the chemistry and biology in 10th and 11th grade. 12th grade, I was fortunate enough to be in a high school that had physics. I didn't know what physics was. I knew one thing, that there were people signing up for physics who were my peers, competitors, as far as grades and classes. I said, well, I know they signing up for physics. I need to take this class right here, see what's going on in this physics class, because I know I'm smarter than them, or as smart as they are. So that's how I ended up taking the physics class, because I was also taking accounting, because I thought I wanted to be an accountant, because it was math based. So I took physics and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. So, but how are they going to turn this into 4 years? I thought I knew everything about physics in that one school year. I'm like, okay, we're done with physics. Okay. But then, my STEM story took me to a physics major, which took me to places intellectually that I found challenging. And that's the thing that gets me going, having an intellectual challenge. And so there I was getting challenged and more challenged. And I realized I was being challenged because I had to study. I'm like, oh, dang, how does this studying thing work? Because I was used to not having to do that because everything, school I had a good school system, but it came so easily to me to learn stuff. But when I got into college and got into calculus and stuff like that, I'm like, oh, I need to learn how to integrate by parts. I need to understand what the area under the curve is and all that other stuff that comes along with you shaking your head. So you must have been in the same place I was. You're like, oh, I got to learn what this means. This wasn't in high school stuff.
Yeah. At all.
So, getting to that point, that's my STEM story. My STEM story is still going on, as is yours. So, moving forward from, the academic credentialing, going through the master's and the PhD level, studying theory, nuclear theory, which was very intriguing to me. That was awesome. And then finding out how few Black women like me and you have done it before I just found that out a couple years ago. I just know I was doing theory and it was cool. And my advisor kind of, it was funny. I did an interview with him a few years back and I asked him why me, because he stalked me. Not stalked, he courted me pretty much away from materials. And he was like, why don't you sign up for my advanced quantum course? I'm like, okay, cool. And then he tricked me into some more stuff. And I was like, this is really cool. He was like, I got a project for you to work on. I'm like, okay. He was like, why don't you leave your advisor and come and be my student? I'm like, okay. So that's how I ended up doing theory, because it was intriguing to me and equipment didn't break down, because I had that happen when I was working on my master's, because I got my master's in condensed matter. And so I did an experimental master's degree and I had some stuff break and I thought I wasn't going to graduate on time. And I was like, oh, I'm not doing this no more. So,
Right.
So those are the types of stories that we all have, different, but we all have a story in between the story to, go along with how we got to be where we are. So that's basically my condensed version of my STEM story. So I hope I hit the points you wanted me to hit.
Oh no, they're great. I do have a question though. So when you decided to move to, or to continue on with your education and get your doctorate, what was that process like? What was that journey? What made you make that decision?
I think that is the decision that is already predestined for a physics student. It's like most of them, very few go get the bachelor's. They may be trending differently now, but that's one of those majors where it's like a stepping stone, the bachelor's degree, then you go into a graduate program, and then the PhD is like, you made it. If you didn't do the PhD, then, you're working for someone else, but your advisors, physics professors in general, don't do career counseling. They do academic counseling. They're like, okay, it's time for me to get you ready to go into a program and to go into another program until you get that PhD. Then you go into academia or you go into government or whatever. So it wasn't even like it was a choice realistically. It was like, okay, and we pay you, because STEM areas, particularly physics, have historically gotten a lot of grant money to do a lot of research. So they have the resources to pay students to be TAs, teaching assistants, or RAs, research assistants. So that was that. I'm like, okay, I'll keep going to school. I like learning.
So I do have a question. So for those people who don't know what physics is, I think people hear the word, they know it's associated with science, but they do not understand it, don't know what it is. So what is physics?
Oh, this is awesome. I get to teach. Okay. Physics in its most basic terms is the study of interactions. Think about it. And if you look at Newton's laws, Newton's first law is about interactions or lack thereof. And I'm going to not get too nerdy, but break it down. So Newton's first law is a body at rest will stay at rest, or a body in motion will stay in motion, as long as it's not acted on by an external force. So let's say you are sitting still like you are now. You're going to continue to sit still unless you press your feet against the floor and stand up, or somebody comes in there and pushes your chair, and then you're in motion at that point. Right. So it's about that interaction that changes your state. So that's basically what physics is. And there are, different facets to looking at different phenomena in physics, but that's the basic thing. And people tend to think that physicists and physics is about bombs and all of that stuff, just based on, what they know about the Manhattan Project and all of that stuff from back in the day. And, yeah, they recruited a bunch of physicists, but that's not what physicists do. No, anyway, I don't know what they do undercover now anyway, I'm gonna leave that alone. I'm gonna leave that one alone. But I hope that brought some context to what physics is in its most fundamental terms. People tend to think there's a lot of math involved, and they are right. But the mathematics helps explain the physical interactions. And so I studied scattering theory, which is basically stuff running into each other. That's what scattering is. It's like collisions. But I looked at it at a microscopic level, which is stuff that you can't see with your naked eye, but you can make determinations based on properties of particles, and how fast one is going versus the other, what type of particle it is, and what's going to happen when they collide based on certain, the environment that they're in. So I apply that to everyday life. This is an interaction. We are interacting right now. You were the projectile because you came after me. You didn't come after me, but you invited me in.
I did.
Okay, there we go. You invited me into the space. So now we're interacting. And when you have a particle interaction, or one with many or one with one, after that interaction, there's that splitting. Either you don't change or you convert into something else, one or the other or both, or stuff starts flying off. Like if I were a molecule, or a nucleus of protons and neutrons, and if you hit me hard enough, I'm going to start breaking up, and stuff is going to start changing into other stuff. Some stuff is just going to fly off and be the same. So there's I call that spreading knowledge. When it's just the same particle, it just goes somewhere else. The other side, and this is my mentorship analogy to scattering, the other side is creating knowledge. So new stuff happens if the interaction behaves a particular way. So I look at it from a mentorship perspective. An individual comes in, they see a group of students, you're like, okay, I want to mentor a student. So you go into the group and you interact and you find out what they're interested in. Then you snatch one off. And then that's that, one you take and you start that new set of interactions with. And so they learn from you, which is the spreading of the knowledge. They're able to tell others what they learned from you, but then they're also able to go off on their own and make new discoveries, which is the creating of knowledge. So I apply scattering theory to everything. And I got to write my book. You are the first person that I have explained this to in this type of setting. So you got me.
I love this. And so I'm taking notes just so you know.
Oh, well, it's on my website, academicblueblood.com. It's on there.
Listeners, you guys need to go there and put your hat on, your learning hat on. It's a wealth of information there. I know that I have never had anyone explain physics the way you just did. It was perfect. It's like
physicists look like me.
That's right. I love it.
I do other disciplines too. I designed this shirt.
I love it. It's beautiful. And I mean, it's who it's in it's so it's always what I say about myself. It's like people are like, oh well, you haven't been a practicing engineer for a while, and I'm like, yeah, but some stuff never leaves you, like the
Right.
principles and the thoughts and the things that you acquired during your journey to the degree and through the degree,
Mm-hmm.
and into the profession. That stuff doesn't leave. It sets you up for me. I'll say it set me up for how I live my life and what I'm doing currently. So the engineering design process, like much like the scientific method, is sort of like ingrained in me doing what I do on a daily basis. And I see that since you said so, how you're using the scattering theory throughout everything that you do. And so I really, I think that is amazing.
Yeah.
So
Thank you. And one of the things that I'm about to start writing, and I've been thinking about it for the last week or so, is the fact that people out here during this pandemic, now I'm dating this interview, but during the pandemic, scattering theory is why this thing is out of control.
mhm,
Interactions. It takes one person with COVID-19 to get in a group of 25, 50, it doesn't matter, 10. And if they interact in a particular manner, guess what? At least 5, 6, 7 of them are going to leave, which is in the spread knowledge side of this thing, and take it with them.
right,
Now, the other ones on the create knowledge side of it, they might be the ones that have the mutated COVID or something like that. They're making something different,
right.
something new. And so even looking at it from that perspective is scattering theory. That's basically what spreading of disease and everything else is. Interaction and then a reaction or result or whatever comes off.
Well, I mean, I think you're right. From everything that we've been able to know about the way COVID spreads, that's right. And so it's up to us. I mean, it seems like a simple solution that seems to have gotten out of hand and politicized a lot. But there's something to it that says, hey, if I'm not interacting with people, if I'm staying within my small pod of people, of folks, and none of us have it, that's the safest bet to go. And by small pod, I mean, is you and whoever's in your house. If there's and then those people stay, like they're not going out to spread the good news,
Right.
or the bad news, whatever, however you're looking at it.
First law, remember, an object at rest stays at rest.
Stays at rest.
Motion stays in motion unless acted on by an external force, which is that COVID.
Right. I totally get it.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us, what else are you doing? And so here's another a side question of that. So during the course of your career, who were your mentors?
Girl. my mentors never go away if you have the good ones. And during the course of my career, I was in, physics is not heavily female. I don't think I ever had a female physics professor. Only time I had, well, I did have some male African-American physics professors. Most of my professors were Asian, and which was not a bad thing. I was at an HBCU. I wasn't dealing with the kind of drama that people get when they go to PWIs. My mentors, I have a set. And the irony is, growing up here in Hampton, Virginia, I didn't have Katherine Johnson or Christine Darden or any of those ladies as mentors because I didn't know they existed. And, that's all. We can do that story another time. But my mentors were my first physics chair when I was an undergrad at Hampton. And he kind of took me under his wing. His name was Dr. Demetrius Venable. He just retired from Howard. He took me under his wing. I was the only major that year when I came in. And like I told you, I applied as an accounting major. Then I went to the physics interest meeting that they have during freshman week and all that kind of stuff. And he was like, okay, well, who is she? So he had his secretary call my dormitory. I'm like, how I get in trouble? I just got here.
Oh, like, who does that? Yeah.
Yeah, and that was back in the day when we had the phone in the hall, and somebody had to answer the phone and call down the hall for you. And so I'm like, what? And so he was scheduling this meeting for me. And so he had the paperwork already there for the change of major form and everything filled out. And he was just letting me know he was changing my major and that I needed to sign it and all that stuff if I was going to be a physics major. So he's still a mentor. He was on my dissertation committee. He had already left the university. He was at Howard then, and he brought me to Howard as a postdoc because he knew without saying that I was going to run into some interference being in physics, being a Black woman in physics, trying to get a postdoctoral position as a nuclear theorist. That's the thing that I did not know. I mean, and we'll get to that. But, he was like, I have a postdoctoral fellowship, come up here, look at the campus, let me show you around and see if you want to take this. And so I went up to Howard and, I did theory in another realm, which was looking at transport theory. That was around the time of 9/11. And, I was in DC on the first anniversary of 9/11 because I was at Howard by then. And so, he was a mentor for me. He's still a mentor for me. Then I had some mentors that I met at Howard, but having mentors younger when I was in elementary school or high school, it was more so like I call it show pony. Teachers and stuff, they like, oh, look what she can do. It wasn't more for like, let me, try to cultivate your ability to learn or new things or exposure to new things. It was more about, every now and then, oh, she can do this or she can do that. But that was kind of reserved for the white students. They got to do other stuff that I didn't do.
Right. Well, I mean, that's real and honest and very familiar.
Mm-hmm. They got to do stuff.
I mean, that's the truth of the matter. So, but when you got to Howard, well, I guess the question I really want to ask is, sort of what made you stay?
Stay in physics? Well, I didn't know any better. I went to HBCU. I forgot to say my alma mater is Hampton. And so, I enjoyed physics. I was naive about the fact that there was race and there were people that didn't think logically, Black, white, or other. I'm like, oh God, human nature is crazy, but you don't interact with people that don't think like you so often when you're studying physics. Everybody is of the same mindset. It's about doing the work. It's about solving the problems. It's about discovery. And at an HBCU, we had different nationalities of people, but we didn't have that toxic environment of racial discrimination against Black students. We didn't, or the white, or the Asian, or the African. It was just, we were a student body that had a common purpose. So why I stayed, I didn't stay. I mean, after I got to Howard and I did my postdoc, that's when I made the decision to become an administrator. I stayed at Howard for 11 years. I stayed affiliated with the physics department, which was cool. I was able to teach courses when I had time to teach courses if I wanted to. And I interacted with the students. And, I went to seminars, I gave a seminar, stuff like that. So I had the best of both worlds. I was working administration, solving problems, doing IT stuff, and enterprise level projects, which was problem solving for me. So that was the cool part. I got to do problem solving, use my skill set, and also stay engaged with the department. So I got out, when I was postdoc, I got offered a position as a dual tenure track at Grambling and Louisiana Tech. And I was like, I ain't moving no Darren, Louisiana. And I was married, so I was like already commuting. I was going to DC. My home was here in Hampton. I lived there for a little while, came home on the weekend. My husband, we were not going to Louisiana. So
Right.
that went down, and I stayed at Howard. And, I had a good run at Howard. And then I left Howard and I came back home to Hampton, and I worked at my alma mater for 3 years, and then I started my own business. And so having the flexibility to expand on my potential, that's the thing that you get when you go into your own space. Being under somebody else's umbrella, you have to do what they want you to do. And to a certain extent, some people give you more autonomy than others. Sometimes you can have that time to go off and explore your own interests and try to retain some of the information that costs so much for you to learn in the first place, and so those are the types of things that you get to do as your own boss. And if you did your money right when you're working for other people, you can afford to do that for a little while until, you start to pick up and make money.
Well, I mean being an entrepreneur has taught me more than I ever learned when I was, whether that was when I was a practicing engineer or when I was in academia. So, because you are your own, you have to rely on yourself, on your own.
Learn a lot about yourself in the process.
True.
Yes.
Which is, I think, is the beauty part of being an entrepreneur, is that you have to know what you know that you know, and you got to go with that. And you can't, it's like the minute you waver, man, that takes you in directions you don't even need to go. But if you know that you know that you know,
right,
then that's when you get to do good work.
Right. But the thing about being in STEM is that you don't take business courses for the most part.
That's true.
You got to figure out some stuff for yourself as far as the business end of it is concerned. And so when I first started my business, I started my business based on a premise that I thought I was offering what people wanted and needed, as opposed to tailoring it a little bit more to what my interests were and what my contributions could be. And, not trying to cast a wide net, but cast a deliberate net to those that I know would be potential clients, and that I could bring my knowledge and expertise to that smaller set of people, as opposed to trying to, cover the globe, so to speak, right. And say, I do this, I do that, I do this, I do that. And you can't do everything for everybody. So I'm now tailoring my offerings down to my my online course platform, and also my career, which I had a good run, and I really enjoyed the work that I was doing when I was on the administrative side of the house, which was managing the IT enterprise. And right now that is crucial. And I know from an HBCU perspective that there are things that need to happen. There are things that need to be assessed. There are projects that need to happen to make sure that, that they can sustain and also offer the best online courses, teaching, infrastructure, security, all of that stuff, physical access, physical security, all kinds of things that go into the back end. And that's what I have done. I did that for 15 years. I did it at Howard, which is probably the most complicated campus on earth. I mean, they had a hospital over here, law school over there, business administration over here. Can't get fiber across Georgia Avenue because people acting a fool about permits. It was just crazy. I got it done though, which was cool. But that's what I want to do. I want to offer IT and online services to higher education entities with a focus on historically Black colleges and universities. That's my lane. That's my mountain.
Well, that's a good mountain. That's a really good mountain. So speaking of HBCUs,
Mm-hmm.
I guess my question is, and again, these are our opinions.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts about how they are, again, this is a generalization too, how they are handling coming back to campus from what you've been able to know?
From the things that I've read, even as early as this morning, I read an article in Politico about HBCUs, and they focused on Howard and online versus on campus and all of that. It seems like each HBCU has to take their own separate approach, and each HBCU has a different level of resources. So I think that it's crucial and critical for each of them, especially the ones with the lower endowments, the lower operating budgets, and also the lower student enrollment, to try to retain and also provide that level of education. That's harder for HBCUs to pull off than it is for PWIs, because most PWIs, not most, there are several that, have way more resources than HBCUs.
Mm-hmm.
So losing students to them, losing students to online programs like the ones that are completely online, been online the whole time, some of these larger ones, is a problem for HBCUs. So it's not just a single faceted issue. And having backup to help them get through that stuff is another issue. They don't tend to get a whole rack of billionaire alums at HBCUs who are willing to stroke them a check. And so it's a challenge, but I think we can make it through it. We made it through the last pandemic 100 years ago. Mind you, we didn't have to do online. I don't know how they got through the last pandemic, but we made it through some wars and some other things. And I'm hopeful that this pandemic will not be the thing that crushes us, or the legislation that is happening around us while this pandemic is happening.
Well, I am of two minds about it. I think they'll be fine. I think all colleges and universities will be fine. I think HBCUs will be fine. And I know that's a blanket statement, like what does fine mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I think they will make it through the pandemic and still be able to operate and do what they do. They'll probably have to, like you said, court students.
Mm-hmm.
But they've had the court students before.
Yes.
And there is, in our current time, such a need for them as a safe space. I would have loved for my daughter to make the choice to go to an HBCU. She didn't. And the truth is that the PWI where she is enrolled gave her such a sweet offer. I mean, sweet offer that it was like we couldn't say no to that, right? So there were some things that right now would have given me peace of mind about knowing that she's at an HBCU. Again, in light of all of the civil unrest that's happening right here in our current state, I would love to know that she's around people who, at least on the surface of things, they look like her, and they'll support her in a way that she doesn't get at PWI.
Right.
And so I think they'll be fine. There's just, there's work that all of us are going to have to do. So I commit to doing my part to help support them, because I know that they are needed, and especially if we're talking about Black and brown people in STEM. I mean,
oh, good Lord, yes.
the stories, and I am one of those who have stories of being at a PWI as the first and only, or the only, in classrooms, and the total disregard for your person is a real thing that we cannot allow to continue.
Right.
So we have to, until those rules, the unspoken rules, are challenged and changed, this will be somebody's story.
Right. And the other thing about HBCUs and us being able to make it, we were pretty much kind of on the outskirts until the Higher Education Act came along in 1964, 1965. That put legislation around us, as opposed to just letting us be over there. Y'all over there, just do y'all thing over there. And the legislation now dictates certain things about how we can move about, how we get resources from the government, and that type of stuff. And that could cripple us during this pandemic in a way. I mean, they put together some acts and things like that to give money to minority serving, and they throw us under that heading and all these silos and stuff. And I'm like, well, we have to be in the same bucket. We have a special designation. We were created for a purpose. This whole MSI, HSI stuff, tribal, yes, they have a certain demographic of people that they cater to. However, HBCUs were created out of necessity and out of a legal reason, because of the segregated South not wanting to allow us to come to their schools. We have a designation in Congress, and I think that that's the thing that is going to give us a little bit harder time to bounce back from this pandemic, because we don't have full legislation over our own bodies.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be all right. We're gonna be all right.
I think you're right, but I gotta let that land just just a bit, because there's so much truth there. All right, so the way I end every show is I ask one question, but before I do, tell everyone where to find you.
Oh boy, here you go. You can find me all over the place, but you can find me on my show, Beyond the Classroom with Dr. Trina Coleman. I am on HBCU Nation, HBCUSmartTV. We are now on the Amazon Fire Stick and Roku. And my Twitter, I changed my Twitter. My Twitter is at, not Twitter, Instagram. Do people still use Twitter? Okay.
Twitter's pretty hot these days.
Oh, well, let me start there then. And my Twitter is at DRTLC. My Instagram is Dr. Trina C. And I can also be found on Facebook. You'll find me, I think it's Trina Christian Coleman is my personal. Dr. Trina L. Coleman is the business page. And if you want to contact me, you can contact me on my website, academicblueblood.com, and fill out the contact form, and you will find me there. So I am on, like
all
I said,
over
place.
And just so my audience can know, all of this information will be found in the show notes when this episode airs. So don't think you have to write too fast to get all that information. We will give it to you.
Oh, I left out one. Can I stick this in real quick?
Sure.
My online course platform is called it's called STEM Skills. The URL is get.stemskills.online. I am working on a new endeavor called Frontline STEM, where I put courses out there to teach the fundamentals that they gloss over in the introductory physics courses, the introductory chemistry courses, that students that may not have had a chance to go to a high school that taught physics, and then they want to go to college and be an engineer, and they're already behind. So I'm doing frontline physics. I'm teaching the unit circle and trigonometry, not in a day, but in like a month. I'm doing like a whole course on just the unit circle and trig and cosine and sine and what all that means and how that works together for physics.
Oh, can I just tell you that I'm having, so my moniker nickname, I've changed it to Nerdy STEM Queen, and you just spoke to her in such a profound and fundamental way.
Then we can talk. But yeah, I'm definitely putting those frontline STEM courses out there so that our students can not be behind before they even get started.
That's the truth. I mean, I can tell you, I didn't take calculus when I was in high school, but I did take physics. So, which is sort of weird because you kind of, one is based on the other, but I had non-calculus physics. So I understood the concepts before we added the calculus in, which I think was really helpful to me considering I had to take like four physics classes as an engineering major. And of course I had to take five calculus classes. So helping me understand concepts and the behind the scenes behind like how we got to this concept. Was
what
really
does that have to do with that? Yeah. How's that work together? Yes.
Yeah. So I really love this idea, and I'm glad that it's you because I know that care has been placed in those courses. So you guys, if you have a son, daughter, or you yourself are interested, you have that inner nerd that you're just like, I have got to feed this. This class is probably, these courses are probably for you.
Yes, and when I launch, I will let you know so you can let your listeners and viewers know as well.
Awesome, please do. So one last final question, and this is the one I ask all of my guests on the show. So it is, if you could travel back through time, if you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, what would you tell her and why?
Okay, if I could go back to yesterday, what would I say?
Yes, yesterday.
No, for real. If I could go back to my younger self, let's say 18, 20, when I was just starting out as a post-secondary student, I would tell myself, now I know that being smart and working hard is not enough. You think that's enough? Being smart and working hard should say, here I am, I'm ready for, whatever. And, I compare, I can get into another one of my comparisons. I blog about it. I'm on Medium too, DRTLXIN. If you want to read some entertaining stuff, go to my Medium page. We should be drafted like athletes. People should scout talent academically. There are students out here doing good work, working with great advisors, doing good research. And so I would need to tell myself to figure out a way to get recognized. Also to figure out a way to deal with illogical people because I'm just gonna put it out there. People that don't study the stuff that we study, that are either ones or zeros, right or wrong, with very little gray in between. That gray part, I don't like the gray. Me and the gray do not get along because the gray can change from one day to the next. So learning how to navigate the gray, I would have to have told myself, because I am not the most filtered person. I mean, filters waste time. So anyway, yeah, try to be more, they call it an EQ now or something like that. They gave it a name a couple years ago. Ain't nobody got time for that. It doesn't help you solve a problem. It helps you make somebody feel better about themselves. That's what. So yeah, but You gotta learn how to know when to hold them and know when to keep your lips together and just make faces like I do sometimes. Like, what did you just say that? So yeah, I would tell my younger self that. That's what I would do.
Nice. So again, to my listeners, it's just been such an honor, and to Dr. Coleman, it's been such an honor to have you on the show. You are welcome back any
Oh,
time.
thank you. And thank you for having me, girl. You know, I'll say all kind of crazy stuff.
Listen, I'm here for it. All of it. All of it.
Well,
All right. So my listeners, you guys, you've been so faithful. You've been so good. I can't even wait for you to hear Dr. Coleman and all of her other platforms. But again, you guys can find us now. We're on Buzzsprout. But on iTunes and Spotify and iHeartRadio and a whole bunch of other places. So anywhere you're probably listening to a podcast, you can now find Stimming and Stilettos there. And until
oh shoot.
and until next time, you guys, keep yourselves safe, and I will see you next episode.